evening session of the October 3rd Johnston County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Welcome all those who are here in person and watching us on YouTube. I'd like to have a couple announcements. First, one, just to let everybody know that we said the prayer and the pledge this morning. Sometimes we get questions about that, about not starting off the meeting with the prayer and the pledge, and just wanted to let folks know that we take care of that at our morning meeting. I do have a couple of announcements here on some appointments from our 10 o'clock meeting. I'll just read those out. We had 3 different boards. We were looking to fill positions that we had more applicants than we did positions open. For the Boone Hill Firefighters Relief Fund Board, Adam Stanley was appointed. For the Planning Board, Timothy M. Little was appointed. And for the Johnston County Heritage Commission, we had 9 appointees. They were Pam Bumgarner, Dr. John Booker, Lyda Boone, Suzanne Cook, Matthew Dean, Pasquale, with a name that I'm not even going to try to say, and then Warren Grimes, Frank Knott, and Angelique Leggett were the 9 appointees for that board. So did I hear a motion? I do need a motion to appoint those. There's a couple of waivers in there I think we need.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we grant those individuals a waiver for the length of service and policy. The Heritage Commission, Pam Lipscomb, Bumgardner, Dr. John Booker, Suzanne Benton, Cook, and Matthew Dean, Warren Grimes, and Frank Knott, Jr.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the appointments, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Appointments are passed. Next up, we have approval and discussion of the agenda. Is there any items that we need to add to or adjust on the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. Second on the agenda is public comments, and I believe we have Dr. Ken Boham here, who's the interim president of JCC, with some special guests. Oh, there he is, back over there. Special guests, so if you would come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Vice Chairman, Commissioners. Just for the record, one noted, this is my 4th time appearing before you, and only one of those times was I asking for money. so you,
This is not one of those times, is it?
this is not one of those
times, Commissioner. So you can honestly say that every time you see me, I'm not asking for money.
3 out of 4 times you're not asking for this. Yeah, 3 out of 4.
I'm not going to guarantee the next time. The next time may be, but this is the 4th time. And I do want to say, Mr. Vice Chairman, we have taken a dually and we've welded a hitch on the back of it, so we'll be able to carry that trailer around. And yes, the Public Service has a budget, and we're even going to be talking in detail about it on Wednesday. So all that business is taken care of.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate it.
And thank you very, very much for your investment in the college, because we just turned in our estimated FTE, which is how we get our money from the state. We're up 7% in FTE for this fall compared to last fall. And we are up 6% in curriculum enrollment over last fall. And that is absolutely fantastic. We're actually up about 25% in basic skills. So we are on a very, very good trajectory, and I appreciate your investment in us. It will pay off. It does matter where you go to school. It really does matter where you go to school, and we're very, very appreciative. And I thought it would be nice, since you did invest this time in the JCC Commissioner's Promise, to have some empirical evidence and hear from people who have benefited from that. And so I brought one of the stellar trustees, who's also chair of the Education Committee, Ms. Mary Daughtry, and she will introduce the students that you have assisted and helped with through the JCC Promise. Thank you very much. Unless you have anything for me, Mary's going to take it from here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Clarification, FTE, full-time enrollment?
Full-time equivalent. Full-time equivalent.
Okay.
You can call it full-time enrollment, but it takes a Philadelphia lawyer to figure out everything that's involved in there. But as the senator knows, that's how we get funded from the state. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Boham. Good evening, Chairman Lauder and Board of County Commissioners. I come to you tonight to share some great news about the Johnston County Commissioners Promise program and how it is already making a difference in our young people's lives. Some of you know me as one of the owners of the Town Market, a local independent grocery store in Pine Level. My husband Billy and I employ lots of wonderful young people there, and I have a few of those with me tonight. I even have a mother with me tonight. We as employers are very thankful that you had the insight to invest in education for our 2022 Johnston County grads. I also wear the hat of Johnston Community College trustee, and Billy and I are always so thankful when our young employees choose to further their education at JCC and continue to stay home and work with us. I would first like to introduce to you James Price. And you can find James working in our meat department many days. I know many of you come in and shop with us, so he's doing a little advertising for us tonight.
Product placement. Got a little product placement there.
Here he is, here he is. He's going to share with you how this tuition money will help him reach his educational goals.
So I have aspirations of becoming an anesthesiologist, and this promise has given me, has let me take the first steps in pursuing my education.
That's awesome.
All right.
Congratulations.
Our next student is Josh Bayer. Many days you can find Josh working hard, keeping our produce department updated and fresh. Josh will share his plans for the near future.
How's it going? I'm Josh. I got plans of being an architect. Right now, this Commissioner's Promise has really helped me kind of get a feel for college and figure out what exactly I want to do and help me pursue for the future. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Tanner Gardner. And while shopping at the Town Market, you'll find Tanner in frozen food and dairy. Tanner was probably our most reluctant student, but he's in there. He's hanging in there. Tanner's going to be sharing with you his next steps educationally.
I'm not sure if I wanted to go to college, but after I heard the Commissioner's Promise, it really made me want to go and further educate myself.
That's great.
That's a good thing, and figure out what you want to do.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Great.
And lastly, we have Brandy Appel. She's filling in for her daughter Corey tonight. Brandy, let me just say, Corey's working. Corey is working. Brandy is actually our front-end manager and head of special projects. Brandy does everything Billy and I can't figure out how to do. The opening of Cisco brought Brandy and her family to our area. Brandy and her husband now have the esteemed pleasure, some of you may have been in this seat before, of educating 2 children in college at the same time. Now Brandy is going to share Corey's educational goals.
So I do want to say thank you, and Corey wanted to apologize for not being able to be here, but she is at work. Her senior year, she actually wanted to be a nurse, and so her counselor actually asked her, are you interested in a college experience? And she said, no, not really. I just kind of want to get in, get out. And so her counselor actually offered her suggested Wayne to her because of the program that Wayne has, partnership with ECU.
We have some work to do there.
So Miss Mary was telling us about the promise that JCC and county commissioners had, and so that changed her mind and gave her the opportunity to actually go to JCC instead of Wayne. So we want to thank you for that.
Awesome.
What does Corey want to do?
She wants to be a nurse. She wants to be a labor and delivery nurse.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
We need her at the hospital.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Currently, actually, that's where she is. She's at Wilson right now. She's employed at Wilson as a CNA.
Good.
Great.
Making steps to get there.
That's great.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Once again, there are many people who say thank you for the commitment you as commissioners have made toward helping to educate our 2022 JOCO high school graduates. Although Brandy is the only parent here tonight, all of the parents of these students are very appreciative. Billy and I believe there could be no better investment of our county funds. As a Johnston County College trustee, we also thank you for your support of our programs and our students at the college. We are very excited about the direction we are headed, and we know you are too. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mary.
Mary, can I ask you a question? How many scholarships are we going to be able to grant?
Total,
Total?
Dr. Boham said tonight 285, 284.
Okay.
And these are 4 of them.
Okay, good. Appreciate you and what you do.
Yep, thank you.
And I've seen a lot of those
Yep.
folks back there. And mainly her, because I go to her for problems.
Any questions for them?
No, great job. I'm saying to the young people, and that includes Mary and Brandy. Thank them for being willing to come up and stand up in front of this group. And I know that's not a fun thing to do, but thank y'all for doing that.
Can we get a photo? I'll put them up here.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Something for Adam to use.
Sure. Yeah, let's do that right quick. Make sure the hat looks good when you.
Well, all I was doing was trying to get up so you could see his face instead of just.
Yeah, come up here and stand in the front. Yep, slide in, yeah. We can squeeze in. Yeah, come on, yeah. They got a tall one in there. I got to stand up straight.
Let's make it about them.
All right,
Let's
all
make
right.
it about them.
All right. All right, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. Perfect. Thank you.
Brandy, you can pass the word to students.
Yeah, that's right. Make sure I find my chair.
Don't fall on the floor.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, sir.
And there, that's 4. That is empirical evidence of what you're doing. And when I talk about numbers, about being up 6%, when you think about what that translates into, the most important thing is every life we can touch, every life we can make better is even more important, Commissioner Brazel, than the FTE. The FTE is fine, but every life we can touch is absolutely fantastic. And thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to, just quickly, I would like to say, it's so inspiring to see our young people that are starting out their careers, and you can become anything you want to be. The world is wide open, and this is a great first step. And so I commend each one of you for taking that step, and congratulations. And we're going to watch and see you accomplish great things.
Yeah. And actually, what you have enabled is, I told a couple of them earlier, that if you're not sure, this is a very welcoming, very warm place, and you've made it very accessible to them to come and find out, what they may want to be. So it's absolutely fantastic.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Makes you want to hang on there, don't it?
Yeah.
No, he didn't add that, did he?
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that.
I don't think that's totally his choice. I think he has.
No, I have a comment on that, but half of it's not for public, the other half is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would also like to add, if we could maybe ask our public information officers to put information out on where people could find out how they can apply and be a part of the Commissioner's Promise.
That's a good idea. Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
May they leave?
Yes. No, unless you just like staying here and listening to people talk. So you're welcome to
Any
go.
of you have an interest in government?
Maybe some of you the extra credit?
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
And I guess before I go into the public comment and read the rule, is there anyone here for public comment that wishes to get up, speak on an item that's not on the agenda? If not, I'll just go ahead and bypass then. I don't see anyone taking me up on that offer. And we did not have any emails to add to the agenda. Okay. Okay. All right. So with that, we'll move on to our public hearings. First up is case 2219, open conditional zoning district hearing, and I'll call Braxton Newton to come forward and present the background on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. Case 22-19, this zoning case involves a 23.45 acre tract located at 6695 NC 42 West in the Cleveland Township. They're requesting rezoning from agriculture residential to general business conditional zoning. Owner NC 42 Holdings LLC, applicant is Gander Development. As part of this conditional zoning request, there are various general business uses that they are identifying to limit the use of, or land uses on the property. Your existing and surrounding land uses and zoning are agriculture and residential in use for such purposes. In addition, there is a general business zoning, which is a shopping center, and also gas station convenience store. There's a special use district nearby as well, which is another shopping center and a mobile home park district. Traffic on NC 42 West, there's 12,500 vehicles per day. This is a 2020 count. And in accordance with our land use plan, this property is located in a primary growth area. Staff recommendation is approval of the request with the conditions as listed in your packet. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
All right, any questions for Mr. Newton? I did have one question. So the driveway that's shown on the site plan, does it line up with that Nicholas way? I know that's in the curve and then kind of transitioning from uphill to, and it may be on the uphill portion there, but does that line up with Nicholas?
Nicholas is actually across to the west of the creek, as you can see that. So it's we're just west of that water body, so it does not line up.
Okay, and there's no DOT, I mean, for the traffic's expected, there's no DOT turn lanes or anything, any other requirements?
There could potentially, most likely, will be some improvement, and they may be restricted to a left in, a right in, right out.
Okay. All right, any other questions for Mr. Newton?
No, I'm just going to piggyback on kind of your question and some concerns about where this is on 42 and, you know, looking at a site plan for storage, which is what I'm understanding is one of the main businesses. Is that correct, Braxton?
That is correct.
Yeah.
That's
you know, I've voiced concerns that I feel like all of 42 is now turning into a storage building facility, which, you know, it's not our job to tell people what they can and cannot build, but at the same time, it's concerning that I feel like there's a lot of properties on 42 that could have better commercial retail uses in the future. But my only concern is when you do have a facility like that, you've got people pulling trailers and things and, you know, turning in. I can see where traffic could back up if you've got several people trying to load and unload, especially in one of the busiest parts of 42 that we're still waiting for DOT to expand.
All right, any other questions? All right, if we would have the applicant come forward and make their presentation.
Hi, my name's Katie Hamilton, and I'm here on behalf of Gander Development at 2310 South Miami Boulevard in Durham. We are requesting to rezone from agricultural residential to the conditional zoning district with a general business. We did review the existing land use plan as well as the envision Johnston County draft land use plan, and we believe that we're consistent With both, for the most part, as in the Envision Johnston draft land use plan, we are on the edge of a regional mixed-use center, and we do have an open space and conservation area running through our site, and we have committed to maintaining that, with the exception of we will be dedicating a sewer easement to the county for servicing development to the north in the future. As noted, we did not align with Nicholas Drive, not because we didn't want to, but because we didn't want to impact environmental features unnecessarily. We will be limited to a right-in, right-out turn, so we will not have turn lanes in. If the commission felt that a deceleration lane for the right-in was necessary, we'd be happy to do a condition to that effect. And I think other than that, the staff did a great job with their report, but I'm just here for questions and comments from the commission.
So you had mentioned the right-in, right? So people going west on 42 are going to go by it and turn around somewhere?
They would have to, it'll be a divided, what our understanding is the future cross-section is a divided median,
Right.
and we're not going to get that left in the future. So if we put the left in now, they're going to close it in the
Okay.
future. So we don't want people getting used to that traffic pattern and then it going away. So we're going to start with the right in, right out from day
Okay.
one.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Hamilton?
I know there's a mix of the general businesses. Any idea of what those are going to be yet, or is that just spec?
That's just spec. We did try to put it up front, obviously realizing the frontage would be nice. And I will say that when we first purchased this land, we actually looked at doing a mix of residential and commercial. Once we started looking at the topography, the residential really just did not work. It's a lot of topography in a very short amount of space, so that's kind of how we ended up in the mix we have right now.
No, and I like that a little bit better. Like I said, just that there are some other commercial opportunities than just storage buildings everywhere.
Understood.
I do also like the idea of a deceleration lane. I'm just, envisioning, especially you're just not far enough from that light right there at 42 and 50. In my opinion, if there's any type of backup, as there can be, trying to get into the gate system, you've got 3 cars, and next thing you know, you've backed up all of pretty much 42. And that's already very congested.
We'd be happy to make that commitment here tonight if that would please the commission.
Any other questions? All right, so you have currently 11 conditions, I believe, in there. So all those conditions are satisfactory to you?
Yes, sir.
And then Commissioner Stevens, you were looking to add the 12th condition with a deceleration lane on the eastbound 42.
I really think it makes sense, especially knowing it's going to be widened anyway in the next 5 years.
We'd be happy to commit to that.
That seems easy enough then. All right, any other questions for the applicant? Is there anyone else here wishing to speak to this case? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to close the public discussion portion of the hearing and call Mr. Newton back up to summarize and present the planning board's recommendation.
Sir, with respect to case 22-19, planning board's recommendation is approval and offers for your consideration a statement of consistency to include the conditions 1 through 11 as stated, as provided in your staff report.
All right, any final questions of Mr. Newton? All right, here none. I will ask one more time for the applicant. Now that the 12 conditions you're agreeable to, all 12 of those conditions, the 12th being the deceleration lane. Sorry, I didn't mean to get, but thank you for coming back up.
Yes, sir. We agree to all 12 conditions.
Okay. Thank you. All right, this time I'm going to close the public hearing and turn it over to the board for deliberation and/or a motion.
Okay, so we can get out of here.
I didn't want to have to start singing, so yeah.
Okay. In the matter of case 22-19, 19, I move to adopt the statement of consistency resolution as presented in the agenda package and approve the rezoning request with the conditions as discussed, plus condition number 12 for a deceleration lane.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. All right. Mr. Newton, I believe it's time for you. We have an open rezoning hearing, rezone some land at 10,842 Cleveland Road.
Yes, sir. I do not see the applicant here this evening. So unless the applicant is in the corridor, we may want to table this item.
I think our policy is if they're not, applicant's not here, we will table that. So if anybody want to check, I don't think there's anybody in the hall, judging from, nope, nobody in the hall. So there we go. We already got it. So, all right. So we will table this to our our first meeting in November. Yeah. November 7th at 6 o'clock meeting.
It sounds funny, say November.
It does.
I feel like we were just discussing September.
All right, with that, we will move on to our third case, case 2223, an open conditional zoning district hearing. Mr. Newton, will you continue with that for us?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Case 22-23 involves the zoning of 5 acres of a 45.74 acre tract located in Lake Wendell Road and Salem Church Road in Wilder Township from agriculture residential to general business conditional zoning. Owner Ricky L. Wood and Teresa J. Wood. Applicant is Adams and Hodge Engineering. Conditional zoning request. The part of their request is to limit the use to an outdoor storage facility. And the site plan, there's a site plan provided for you in your packet. The existing or surrounding land uses are AR and use for residential and agriculture purposes. There is within some distance an I-2 SUD, and this is a legacy district, which is a solar farm, and an I-1, and this is used as a light industry. There's also a mobile home park nearby. The traffic counts for Lake Wendell Road is 1,100 vehicles per day, and that's a 2016 count. Salem Church Road, there is no counts available. This property is located in our secondary growth areas per our current adopted land use plan. Staff does recommend denial due to inconsistency with our our current comprehensive plan.
All right, any questions from the board of Mr. Newton? I did have one. So what is the 20-foot, and I can't read that, is that Class B? So what is that?
Class B buffer?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's essentially a planted buffer of trees, understory. We typically, especially along the roadways, we like to go with understory trees and shrubs and remove some of the larger trees as they kind of may pose a hazard to the traveling public. But that's one of our landscape buffers. So it's a moderate landscape buffer. It is the lesser, where it's lesser than a Class C, which is our most intensive, and a little bit greater, more intense than our Class A.
And is the berm, I know the berm's noted, is that typical or is that?
That is typical, yes, sir.
Okay, it is, okay. And how tall are those? Do we have a requirement for those?
We do not have a requirement for the berm, no, sir.
Okay, I will ask that to the applicant when he comes forward. So, all right, any other questions? If not, I will ask the applicant to come forward and present his case.
Good evening. I'm Donnie Adams with Adams and Hodge Engineering, 314 East Main Street in Clayton, and I appreciate you, all of you, giving your time tonight to do the county's business. Number one thing I wanted to mention tonight, what I'm not going to do is request any sewer allocation or send any more students to our schools. But with that being said, what is before you, as Braston noted, is a request for outdoor storage, not to be confused with mini storage, so there's no structures proposed. This is all outdoor, minus we did leave an option in our conditions to at some point, if it was necessary, or I guess the market showed it necessary, an option to build a covered area for RVs or boats or whatnot. That being said, what I'd like to do, that'd be good. Okay. This is a copy of the current comprehensive growth plan. You can see where the site is. Like Braston said, we're in a secondary growth area. We're very close to a primary growth area, which is the orange, just to the west of the site. We are the sites that, and I'll show them on another slide in just a second, but the sites that Braston noted about the I-1, currently zoned I-1, are at the intersection, which is about a quarter mile from this site. Also, next slide, this is a copy of the current, not the current, but the proposed draft comprehensive growth plan. Again, we're showing our site. A little difference in this one is you can see a little small circled area just to the west. That's that intersection that I just noted. It's identified as a rural crossroads. So I'll talk a little more about that in just a second. Next slide is a combination aerial and parcel map of the area. Just wanted to show you what's going on out there. The parcel in red, that's the entire parcel that my client owns. And then the purple area is the 5 acres that he's cutting out to do the outdoor storage. He currently farms you can see what's being farmed now. He currently farms that, and his hope is to continue to do that on into the future. Up at the top of the screen is the solar farm noted earlier. In the middle is the rural crossroads from the comp draft plan. Below that, as part of that crossroads, existing zoning and existing uses are the 2 parcels on either side of Wendell Road. They're zoned I-1.
What is that actual distance between the site and those 2 uses?
It's right around a quarter mile.
Okay.
And continuing on down, I've identified where the parcels are. To the right at the top is a mobile home park, again, somewhere between a quarter and a half mile down. And then adjacent to the overall parcel, you can see the Corinth Holders High School. And as you know, schools come into an area, things change a lot. And so I think that's one of the things that potentially changed between the current comprehensive growth plan and the proposed one identifying the rural crossroads. And just a quick note about that from that draft comp plan, the crossroads are small concentrations of commercial uses in rural portions of the county, serving a small population across a large geography. They can be found at intersections of state highways and other major roads in rural areas. Uses typically include convenience, retail, food outlets, restaurants, fuel stations, agricultural support uses, etc., and typically have less than 25,000 square feet of non-residential space. So I think that shows on the new comp plan, but it's actually what's going on site now to a certain degree with the I-1 zoning. As we move into our site plan, so first off, I want to back up and say with our outdoor use, it's not a high impact as what was described in the rural crossroads. We're a light impact, a light traffic producer. It's a service. It provides a need for the community, for the growth that's going on in the area. I just pulled some information from the website earlier, the county's website, that in 21 and 22 there were somewhere around 700 to 800 homes or lots approved within a 5-mile radius of the site. So there's a lot of growth going on out there. And as you know, all of our subdivisions today have an HOA and some type of covenants, and so it's more restrictive and more restrictive on things you can do and things that you can park in your driveway or that are visible. So RVs typically are tough to pull off boats and trailers. So this has got a lot of people in the area that need somewhere to park their toys, I guess, and this is a great place for them. A couple things that I think are key to what we're doing. First off, we've identified 15 conditions that we've self-imposed, and they're before you, and I'll be glad to go through those if necessary. We're good with all of those. This is what we presented through the planning board.
Mr. Adams,
Yes,
let me ask you, on 9 and 10, it says if 17,000 square foot of impervious surface and then more than one. Is that going to be the case?
Yes, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
And
I
that-
thought so. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, the if was just being consistent with what the stormwater ordinance requires. But yes, sir. And speaking to that, while we're on the site, so we've already identified a location in the, about midway to the far left of the screen, top of our parcel, top left portion of our parcel is where we plan to have to control the stormwater for the site. Couple of important things. What we see, this, as I mentioned earlier, this low impact use as compared to a higher impact that's tighter to that rural crossroads. We see this as low impact and forming some type of buffer transitioning into the, as things continue to grow into the agricultural residential areas. Part of this is we've identified, this is a blow-up of our plan. You guys also had a copy in your packet of the full plan, but this is a blow-up. The green areas are just wanting to identify the buffers that we're putting around the site. The dark green is a 20-foot Class B. That's along the two public street right-of-ways. It's going to include an 8-foot fence, a 4-foot berm, and I believe one of our conditions do call it out as a 4-foot berm. And on top of that berm, we plan to have evergreen landscaping, and it's identified in the table. Can't see it as good as I hoped you could. And then to the west and south, it's a lighter green color. That is a 10-foot Class B buffer. It's going to be an 8-foot opaque fence and the same type of landscaping.
I did have one question then.
Yes,
On 13, it reads an 8-foot fence or a 4-foot berm.
Yep.
And what you're saying along the streets is going to be both an 8-foot fence and a 4-foot berm?
Yes, sir, but to be full clarification on that, the portion, the light green portion, I guess, on the west side and the south side, that's going to be an 8-foot opaque fence.
Okay.
And the evergreen landscaping. The option is for along the street right-of-way, what we've proposed is a 4-foot berm plus the landscaping. Landscaping at planting, evergreen landscaping is going to be a 4-foot minimum. So we're already doing that 8-foot of opaqueness, but we're still putting a chain link fence inside, not we won't be doing opaque to the fence. Yes, sir.
So that 13 doesn't quite read that way. It says an 8-foot opaque fence or a 4-foot berm with adequate. And so you've got an opaque is along the backside and the non-street side, and the street side is going to have the berm plantings and a 8-foot fence, just not an opaque fence.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Is that something we need to clarify for?
And
Okay.
And I guess one of the reasons for that is in the UDO, it talks about the opaque screening. And so we could just put the opaque fence up, 8-foot fence, and be done with it. We realized that for security purposes, we want to fence it in, but we wanted to go to an extra level of landscaping.
I appreciate that, doing that.
So, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just clarifying, because I think I just got more confused. So on the roadside, you said a chain link fence, but are you saying it will also be opaque, so it's screened? Because it seems to me like that would be more ideal for, you've got the landscaping to conceal that the fence is there, but that green opaqueness seems like it would, I'm assuming it's green, that's the ones I've seen, would add, A, more security so people couldn't see right there off the road what's in there, and B, the landscaping will just end up hiding at the end of the day. So I guess to me, I would have thought that's where you would have put the opaque fence.
Well, I think what you got the berm with this planted, and then the fence is behind it, so it'll be kind of concealed rather than having the opaque fence behind the berm, so I think that's,
That was the intention of it, providing the same 8-foot barrier, basically, with the combination of the 4-foot berm and then 4+ feet of evergreen planting at planting size. And the plants are proposed to grow 15, 20 feet tall, so we do have that clear thing. I understand your question, but that was the intent, to differentiate the two. The other doesn't have the berm, just has the fence
Right.
and landscape.
Which makes sense with where it's at. I would just think on the road, you would want as much privacy as possible.
Donnie, I was going to wait until you got through, but since we got into questions, I'll jump on in. First off, this is this is in my district, and I've had neighbors come and tell me how much they support this, and so I'm going to support it. But I do have some questions. Are the Woods going to come up and talk, or just you?
They are available for questions that they would.
It doesn't matter. I want to ask, I want to put another condition. You want me to ask you or wait till they come up?
They don't plan to come up unless you
Okay.
speak to them, but they can.
All right. This is a church right beside this.
Yes, sir.
And I know the church had expressed some condition about interfering with their Sunday morning service. So I wonder if they would agree that that they would be closed on Sunday morning.
I don't know that I'm willing to do that, but also.
Mr. Wood, Mr. Wood, could I ask you to come to the microphone? Yeah. Yeah. We want to make sure everybody on YouTube can hear what you're saying.
The church is only open once every third Sunday. So it's not every week that the church is open.
Well, would you agree that when they do have services, you would not be open?
I would consider that, yes, sir.
Okay. With that condition, I very much support your request.
Yeah. And it's quite a distance. It's not right on top of the church either, so. I don't know the exact distance, but it's not right on top of the church.
Where is the church? I'm trying to find the church.
Okay, you see the purple
Yep.
site? Then there's the open area. The church is in the little cutout portion there. So our site, excuse me. Our site is around 400 foot, I believe, from the intersection south. So it's about equal that distance. So we're around.
And there's woods in
a little
between.
better from the church side.
And it's wooded in between.
It's not. It's
open all the way?
open. Other
Yeah,
than
it's like-
landscaping, they may have a front.
Yeah, okay.
Some trees right around it.
Oh, yeah. But that's on the back side? Is that, I'm sorry, I just called up I was trying to find it on the GIS. It's on Salem Church Road, is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Excuse me. If you follow the purple and come down to where you see the little tree area, okay, there's a tree area, and then there's the cemetery, and then there's the church. And that exact distance, I do not know.
Yeah, I don't think for a couple hours a month it'd be much of a burden to do that.
No, that should be.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple of questions.
Sir.
How many sites will there be on this plan? The way you've drawn
You
it
were going
out.
to ask me that, and it slipped my mind. I looked, and I couldn't zoom in well enough to tell you, but I believe it's between 125 and 150. Is
I
what
was
we
going to say, I was
proposed.
estimating about 150.
Yeah, I
Do
got
you
a
have a
number.
length limit?
I have a number, and you may be able to, what is it? 133.
Okay. Do you have a length limit, like for an RV, a huge bus or that sort of thing?
That they're going to limit the space, the largest space that we laid out, I believe, is 50 feet deep.
What about, how do you delineate each space?
That, I don't have a wonderful answer to that. It's going to be site-specific on how they do it. We have one that's under construction now, and the owner's looking at a couple different ways. So we've not got into the details specific enough to really say that, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
One more question. It's listed on here with regards to buildings or structures, not that you can predict the future, but is there plans for big buildings and structures? Are we going to be looking into more indoor storage or?
No, ma'am, no intention for indoor. The structure part was just the intention to provide like a pole barn, basically, to, a shelter to cover any spaces. And I don't believe he has a plan for that as well. I probably added that in as part of our discussion. That wasn't enough.
Just to make sure you're covered for future if
Yes.
he needs an office or, okay, that makes sense. I agree. I feel like there's a major need in that area for stuff like this with the amount of development coming, and if we're trying to reduce yard sizes and lot sizes and things like that, it's going to continue to create more of a need of this. And as someone who owns an RV, I understand the need.
Any other questions? All right, so you've talked about the conditions already, and we've talked about the addition, I think, of a 16th, was that 16?
16 now. Yes.
To be closed, or not to be open during what I would say, and I'm going to say regular church hours, because they may have a special service, and I don't know how they keep up with that, but if we know it's the, whatever, the third Sunday of the month or whatever, then, yeah, okay. And I'll ask it now, and I won't ask it again, but, so you're okay with the 15 plus the 16th condition?
Yes.
I just say they said they were, so, okay.
Agreed.
Thank you. All right, so if there's no other questions for Mr. Adams, is there anyone else wishing to speak to this? If you would, state your name and the town or township where you're from.
Yeah, I'm Randy Edwards. My family and I own 4 different farms that touch this tract of land. And I've talked to a lot of the neighbors, and they would just soon rather have this instead of a subdivision or any more commercial. So I think the neighborhood is in favor of it. And the Johnston family has been very good for 100 years. The road's named after them. And they're just trying to keep the farm as a whole farm and keep it intact. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, if not, I'll close the public discussion portion and ask for Mr. Newton to come and summarize and present the planning board's recommendation.
Did you want to mention that?
Oh, thank you.
There was one message about
Yeah,
that.
there was one. So I did want to add, you can still come forward while I do this, so you don't have to sit back down. But we did receive an email from Larry Gabriel today in support of this case. So I just want to make sure that's part of the record. Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. All right, proceed on, Mr. Newton.
Yes, sir. Planning Board recommends approval of case 22-23 and offers a statement of consistency for your consideration. In addition to any motion that's made, if the conditions are to be amended, let's make sure we capture those succinctly with the motion.
So we have the 16th. My question is, can staff handle succinctly on the opaque fence, berm?
Yes, I think we can settle that one. That's a or versus and situation.
Okay.
And note the street
Well,
versus the internal property line.
Yeah, because if I look at it, think about the
Interior
fence on the inside of the street access is not part of the landscape, it's security.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm good then. All right. Any questions, last questions for Mr. Newton?
I do. Refresh my memory, what was 14 and 15?
Oh, were we on the 13 with that? I might have been remembering it wrong.
I'm trying to figure
Okay,
it out.
let's just go.
16.
What's in there?
So the fence, opaque fence and berm came into question. That is in item or in condition 13.
That can be clarified.
That can be that can be clarified. We can take care of that. The other condition that's been been discussed was the operation hours, limiting the operation hours so that it doesn't conflict with the church operation.
Okay, but that is 16.
That would be 16.
Well,
No.
wouldn't that be
I only-
There's 15 in there right now.
15 in
I only see 13.
I only see 13 on mine.
It's 15 in mine.
Page what?
They didn't use that.
Page 32.
Yeah, I think you might be looking at the wrong case, I think.
No, I'm not. It's just further in that same case.
30,
Page 36 of your,
that's correct.
I see 15 now.
Oh, we have, okay, yeah, there's two different ones. One stops at
Yeah.
13 and one stops at 15.
It's over there near the maps. There was
Okay.
only 13 in that one. That's what was confusing me.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was 14 and 15.
Well, I was gonna say, sometimes my memory's bad, and I wasn't looking at it when I said it, so glad I was right on that case. So, all right, so we got 16.
16.
All right.
Yeah, okay.
And I will say, okay, any last questions for Mr. Newton? All right, and thank you. And I guess I will make one more last thing, that we have 16 conditions, and the applicant is agreeable to all 16 of those. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
I'd like to move to adopt the statement of consistency.
But can I close the hearing first?
Okay, I'm sorry.
All right, now I'll close the hearing and turn it over to Commissioner Smith for a motion.
All right, I move to adopt the statement of consistency resolution as presented, the agenda package, and approve the rezoning request with the conditions as discussed, with the addition of condition number 16, which states that the business will not be open during church services, which I believe it's once the third.
it's a primitive Baptist church.
Is it, do they have a fixed time?
It's from 10:30 to 12 o'clock, the third Sunday.
Add,
They have about 15 or 20 members.
add that to it.
Yeah,
Second.
that's what I grew up in.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I did hold my nose on that.
All right, next up, we have presentation of our draft comprehensive plan, land use plan. And Mr. Newton, would you introduce our guests?
As always, it is my pleasure to introduce this evening Ms. Meg Nealon with Nealon Planning and Mr. Ben Hitchings with Green Heron Planning. They are our lead consultants on this project. It has been a long endeavor. However, I will applaud them and the entire project team. They've done an excellent job. So at this time, I'll ask Meg and Ben to come forward and go through a presentation for you.
Thank you. Good evening, and
Good
thank you
evening.
for this opportunity to be in front of you again. I'm Meg Nealon with Nealon Planning, and with me is Mr. Ben Hitchings with Green Heron Planning. And as Mr. Newton said, we are leading the consultant team that has been working on this preparation of this plan with staff and members of the community for about a year now. And so this evening's presentation is to orient you to the plan and hit the highlights, give you a little taste of the various sections within the plan, and we will emphasize the section with the recommendations, so we'll touch on those, especially those which are related to some of the themes that we heard over and over again through the process. So with that, Mr. Hitchings and I will take turns sharing some of the slides here. The presentation outline is simply 4 sections. I want to touch on the process that we've been through to develop the plan. We'll give you a plan overview, what's in the plan. If you've had a chance to review the draft, this will be familiar to you, how all the sections sequence. The third section, which contains the vision, that's usually what people go to see what is envisioned for the future of the county. And then Section 4 are the recommendations and strategies. So we will, again, just highlight some of the things that surfaced as some of the most important through this process. So speaking of process, in the plan, early in the document, you see just an overview of how the whole process unfolded. Several phases there that took us through to the point we've arrived at today. to capture both the background information, the ideas that came forward, and then how all of that fed into what that overall plan, especially the future growth and conservation map that's in the plan, evolved, the supporting recommendations, and then some of the key implementation steps. So with that in mind, we had an involved community engagement process that was undertaken throughout the process.
We know how important it is with a planning effort such as this to give a chance to stakeholders throughout the county to provide their input. And so we had substantial public engagement as part of the project. That included, of course, a steering committee that you all appointed that met 6 times. We also had a chance to talk with each of you a couple of times to hear your key issues and items of interest. We also did 4 public forums, and many of those were at the Ag Center just outside of town. We also had one up in Clayton. We did also 4 online surveys that were structured to ask similar questions to the kinds of things that we asked folks at the public forum. So we got input from a broader group of folks, some of whom weren't able to attend the in-person meetings. And then we also had some creative things like a special mapping exercise online that folks were able to put dots on a map online telling us about key issues that they were interested in and that they wanted to see addressed in the plan. By the time you go through that level of effort, you've created a significant opportunity for those who are interested to participate, and you can see all the different ways that folks participated in the process. As a result of all that input, we got hundreds of different comments. So in the surveys, we'd ask folks questions, and we'd also give them an opportunity for providing open-ended responses. So these are just 3 examples of the kinds of comments we got. Again, they're an extensive number covering a variety of topics. And I will say, there's a lot of interest in how the county is developing and how land is being used in the county. And there's a fair amount of energy behind some of the comments, as you can see when you read them. So folks really care about the future of the county and are looking to this plan and this process and the implementation to help address the issues that they care about. All right.
So if you've had a chance to look at the plan in its draft form, the table of contents reveals some of the things that I was just mentioning, and it mimics how the process unfolded. So the introductory information in the first chapter then leads to that snapshot of today, or this time frame, sharing some of the major issues and opportunities that informed a lot of people's decisions about what they thought should be true about the county 20 years from now or so. The vision includes the goals and the future land use and conservation map. And then the realizing the vision section is organized so that those various topics that came up throughout the process have those recommendations outlined within those subsections. The vision section is the third one. It begins with the goals that were developed through the process and vetted with the public and the steering committee and refined as the process moved forward. These became our guideposts, or the lens through which we examined some of the ideas that were coming forward and deciding, is this in keeping with what we're hearing from the public? Does this really capture the essence of what people are suggesting when they think about the county 20 years from now? So those goals are intended to guide decisions of county leaders going forward, even as circumstances arise that didn't come up during this process. So those should serve you well for many years. The future land use and conservation map is a graphic depiction of that future vision that encompasses a lot of the details that are suggested with those goal statements. You see on the left-hand side a number of what we're calling place types, and I'll come back to those. But you see the various colors across the map are representing those different place types, and we have highlighted the municipalities within the county, understanding those are our municipal areas that, of course, they're part of the county, but our focus was on primarily the unincorporated portions of the county. Describing that map and in support of that are the place types. Now, those go beyond just being land use categories and describe a bit more detail about the places that are possible within the county. Some of them are places you have today. Some are places that were described to us with working with the community of what people expect to see here in the future in the unincorporated areas. So they range from different types of open space, conservation, of course, being an important one, different types of living areas, so different types of residential place types that also describe the different housing products that you might find in those place types. And then also, as you move into the more red and orange colors, you're seeing opportunities for commercial development, mixes of uses, where you have those concentrations that make it easy to access jobs and services and so on. And there are certainly places for those in the county as well. So the place types go beyond those descriptions and include details about circulation, about open space, and essentially differentiating one from another. I will point out that as we came through this process, we've heard loud and clear that one size does not fit all, that having choices in the county was extremely important to the people who were answering our surveys, showing up at our meetings, and participating in other ways. So the county is evolving. With the growth that's coming to Johnston County, it's not surprising that this evolution demands a higher level of complexity in terms of your land use, which will also inform other decisions about where development goes, what type it is, and how to serve it with infrastructure. So when you look at your current future land use map and your current zoning, not a lot of differentiation across the landscape, and we heard from people over and over, we'd like to have more choices in all aspects. So if we just look at the open space and the various types of areas where we see most of our housing concentrated in the unincorporated areas of the county, these are meant to suggest in terms of relativity, think of it like a scale, that when you go from a conservation open space and work your way up the scale, as you go to the more yellow colors and the orange on the map, you're getting opportunities for more density, but you're also getting opportunities for more housing choices, which we also heard through the process. So the exact densities in each of those are not important at this point in time, but it is important to understand that there is some distinction there, and they set up essentially as a scale.
All righty. So once we've worked with the different stakeholders to craft a shared vision and goals and objectives, then it's time to develop an implementation strategy. We always are trying to do that to make sure that the implementation measures that we select are well aligned with that vision. And so you can see again feedback that we got through the public process on a myriad of issues, with everything from maintaining rural character to protecting the agricultural economy to promoting the development of a greenway system to having appropriate housing opportunities and commercial opportunities. So again, the recommendations flow from that input. When we're developing our implementation portfolio, we dig into that local government toolbox that we've got here in North Carolina, and we've got 4 major kinds of tools. So as you hear Ms. Nealon and myself describe the different strategies, all of them pretty much fit into these 4 categories. So we've got regulation, we've got public investment, we've got programs and initiatives and policies, so utility policy or educational programs that we might develop. And then sometimes there are parts of the county or issues that require a more detailed analysis. So we'll also have some follow-up plans and studies. First off, so often when we do an updated comprehensive plan for a community, there's a need to then update the development standards to align with that updated policy framework. So this is a very common core implementation activity to amend and rewrite the Johnston County Land Development Code. And so there are two levels at which this can happen. There can be some more minor short-term updates at the same time that y'all want to consider a more extensive rewrite of the ordinance. And when we do that, we're trying to align the development standards with the updated vision. We're trying to improve the clarity and predictability of those development standards so folks know what to expect. We also are trying to develop those standards with some understanding of the municipal regulations. Just as Ms. Nealon described it, there's also a continuum that extends into the towns in terms of more intense development in the municipal areas. And so all of that can happen as part of an amendment and update to the development standards. We're also, as when we see the amount of development demand that y'all are seeing here in the fastest growing county in the state, we often see demand for development that is of a scale that demands municipal services. And so part of the strategy is to allow the towns to do their part in accommodating that more intense development so we can have more appropriate development in the unincorporated areas. So that is a core strategy, and there, of course, there's access to additional services above and beyond what we might see in an unincorporated area. And in our analysis, there is significant land still, not only within the incorporated boundaries, but also within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of many of the towns. So that's a core strategy.
So within the plan, you're also seeing the commercial nodes. Now, this is building on what's in your current plan of activity nodes and taking it a step further. So one of the recommendations is to concentrate commercial development and activity nodes. So that level of detail that's described in the place types suggests that there are opportunities within these nodes. There are more of them in the new draft plan, and the description gives some variety there to better explain what those opportunities are. So in that concentration, you're establishing sort of that hierarchy of concentrations of commercial, retail, dining, shopping, those sorts of things, but there also may be some employment that's part of it, civic uses, and so on. It makes it easier to access services, and places, those are located where we're expecting those concentrations of population as well, so that ease of access is facilitated with those locations. The suggestion there is that they take on the principles of compact communities so that the form, the circulation, the open space, and the mix and the proximity of those uses really starts to lend themselves to that walkable mixed-use center. So think of it as villages on different scales, and I'll touch on the details of these a bit more. We looked at a couple of these places because the question that always arises, what does this really mean on the ground? How do we accommodate this? So we looked at the McGee's Crossroads and we looked at Corinth Holders, two different parts of the county. To differentiate those two, and I'll back up for a second, McGee's Crossroads actually has a couple of those in that particular area between the interstate interchange and 50. And then Corinth Holders is close to one of the rezonings we heard about this evening with a rural crossroads. So starting with McGee's, so we heard over and over through the process, we know commercial development's coming to Johnston County. Not all of it's going to land, and has not been landing completely within your municipalities. So how do we organize and manage that growth so that it really makes sense in our unincorporated areas? Well, you can have these activity nodes that, unlike the Cleveland area with 42, we heard a lot about the traffic issues out there and the growing concerns about development exacerbating those traffic issues even in advance of a widening of 42. So when you think about something like this area, we heard from folks, can we do something different? Well, yes, you can, and it's a concerted effort from a design standpoint to look for taking that same amount of growth and thinking about the form and function of those uses on the ground. How do they concentrate in particular areas where the street network lends itself to traffic being able to flow in places off of these main arterials that we depend on that NCDOT manages. So when you think about something like that, it can include some internal streets, some of them that are actually private drives but designed to look like streets. But that network and how buildings are oriented and placed in close proximity to each other start to set up in a way where public spaces and areas for walking and biking and other ways of easily accessing these uses can be accomplished. NCDOT has a complete streets policy and design standards that go along with that. So even with some of these public streets being an NCDOT right-of-way, that is possible. So just by way of example, we examined McGee's Crossroads. So this is, and I don't know if this works on the screen. It does not. So on the right side of your screen, you're seeing I-40 interchange. That is 210 that runs in an east-west direction and connects over to 50. So when we think about how we take an area like that that's already getting that development pressure and think about what's the organization of development that's already coming that way, look for ways to have connectivity, look for ways to have housing choices, look for ways to have retail that serves both the area residents as well as the traveling public. So you've got sort of a regional service area there as well as a local service area and some civic uses. So just to share some of the details of the principles of a place like this, you're looking for that concentration in these key places where you already have the infrastructure and taking some of the pressure off of the surrounding agricultural uses to develop for these types of uses. You're also seeing a connected open space network. So within the areas where you're getting those concentrations of higher density residential to meet some of the demand for different housing choices, you're also complementing that with organized open space that connects to maybe a broader network. You can see greenway opportunities on the north and south side. And so that variety is a nice complement to the housing mix there, as well as the commercial people who'd be working in this area could also take advantage of that. I mentioned the mix of uses being within walking and biking distance of the residences that are in that service area. An expanded set of housing choices may come in the form.
When you go back, could you maybe go back forth a couple times so we can catch where those dots
go
yeah. up? Yeah, so we can see where they
do
are.
A little dance like that?
Yeah. Thank you. Help me out, yeah.
Sure. Okay, so now you're seeing the dot go to a housing area. So in between these two different types of nodes, there's the suggestion that maybe some of the lot sizes can drop here with infrastructure serving this area. You might even have townhouses. You might have some multifamily. So it starts to make sense in an environment where people also have access to jobs, access to shopping, and so on, and access to recreation. Okay, here's another one. You'll notice if you study the street network, it starts to take pressure off of 210. So what we're experiencing in a lot of our major roadways through the county is this pressure to widen and widen and widen because there are no parallel routes. As development continues and you seek that connectivity that runs networks in a parallel fashion, you get those internal street networks that give people other choices. So local traffic does not have to get out onto the major highways every single time they are taking a trip from one place to another. And then I already mentioned the greenway opportunities that if you span out and really look at your network and your opportunities for greenways across the county, this really starts to connect a lot of places and connect this place to other locations, to schools even. So that's something to think about in the planning of those. So there's a recommendation for doing small area plans in those locations to start to make sense of those principles. The rural crossroads. So I'm going to pick on this one spot along the 210 corridor. This is what we typically see in Johnston County as rural crossroads. And if you look in the lower left, it is a lot of incremental development, each with their own driveways, all entering out onto these DOT highways. It, too, would benefit from a more organized approach. You might get something like this where you're seeing some more attention to detail in setbacks and landscaping and so on. But in plan view, let's look at Corinth Holders. Some of the ideas here are it's a naturally occurring crossroads that wants to have some commercial uses around it. And to do that, you're serving the local area. So it is some of those farm support businesses. It is that local convenience or a food outlet. It is some of those other types of smaller businesses that are very much focused on the surrounding community. But rather than having them dispersed on our highways, concentrating them in these defined nodes gives you a chance to, again, look for those opportunities for some connectivity so you're not putting driveway after driveway directly onto these roads, providing access to a lot of properties there. The clustering makes it walkable, so once you arrive, you're not getting in your car to go to the next business and the next business. Civic uses are typically part of this, so they naturally become those places because of a school, because of a fire station. Those kinds of things are there, so they become the magnets for these other types of uses to collect around them. Buildings and lots are clustered in a way that you're taking advantage of the most buildable area and being sensitive to the areas that surround that may be have environmental constraints, they're environmental assets, but they also may be within these rural areas where you have some viable agriculture and not fragmenting that existing agriculture that is still operating today. It takes the pressure off of that. And then, of course, with that type of scenario, you can have setbacks that are maintained for landscaping and so on. So you can maintain some of that rural feel. It doesn't feel like a town emerging in the middle of your otherwise agricultural community. Another recommendation is for the more intense residential development in a broader range of housing types. So, of course, this would be in places where there's infrastructure to support that. But we heard through the process that people's ability to move here, find something affordable, age in place, spend their lives in Johnston County demands that they have a variety of housing choices to go with the various chapters of their lives. So the idea here is to amend the Land Development Code and direct residential growth to the municipalities where there's already some of that activity. A lot of your infrastructure is in and around there and so on. So taking advantage of that existing infrastructure. And then maintaining the design standards. So we heard a lot about development quality in the development that's coming forward. So what does that look like? And I'll touch on that in a few minutes when we come back to conservation design.
Another comment that we heard extensively through the public engagement part of the process was the importance of agriculture, the agricultural economy, and also agriculture as a way of life. And we heard from folks who have been on their farm for generations, in some cases 100. I think we even had a lady who has been on their farm for, or whose family had been on the farm for 200 years. So that was a key source of input for us. And so we really dug in to look at what other things could the county do to help maintain the agricultural economy and agricultural activity in appropriate places in the county. One of the things we discovered is that you have a really good agricultural economic development plan from 2010. But it's been a dozen years, so it probably needs to be revisited and updated. But there are a lot of good strategies in there. In order to truly protect the aspects of the working landscape, our experience has been you really have to bring together a number of different strategies. There is no silver bullet with this work, and it really takes a whole portfolio of measures. Again, many of those are described in the agricultural development plan. We know one of our challenges with agriculture is bringing along the next generation, and so education and promotion are so important. We need to both build the next generation of farmers, educate them, and we also need to help the thousands of folks who are moving into the county understand the importance of agriculture to the county. So those are important early activities. The other thing that we think is really fundamentally important is to, again, find a way to bring together a number of different strategies with a commitment to protecting agricultural communities. So we are suggesting that the county explore developing a what might be called an agricultural communities program. This would be voluntary because we know land is not going to remain in agriculture if the owners don't want it to. But in places where folks do want to keep farming and where there's an agricultural way of life, we think there's a chance for the community to work together to help protect this land. So then the question is, what would that look like? Again, you'd have to bring together a number of different strategies. We've looked at other approaches around the country, and some core elements include, first of all, trying to protect the land base and trying to help the property owners find ways to make a living. We know at times that can be challenging with weather events, consolidation, and the like. And so we think that a key aspect of a voluntary program would be if farmers are willing to continue farming, would the county be willing to offer a number of supports, like establishing a purchase of development rights program where willing farmers could sell their development rights to the county. That would help protect the land base while also helping farmers who we know so often are land rich and cash poor extract some value from their property, which they could reinvest in the farm or use for other needs that they might have. The programs that have been successful with purchase of development rights are the ones that have also had a shorter term strategy to help protect the land, because it takes a while to generate the resources, investment over a period of time. And so we think a part of this initiative could be voluntary agricultural protection zoning, so that in return for petitioning the county to be an agricultural community, farmers would then have access to this purchase of development rights program and a variety of other initiatives. One of those initiatives could also be greater flexibility for non-farm activities. Again, looking for ways to help folks make a living in a way that's compatible with the rural landscape and continue farming. That's one aspect of this. One thing that we heard from a number of folks in the public involvement process was conflicts between new residential development and long-standing agricultural areas. And so one of the things that we think could help with that is the establishment of agricultural buffers on the newly developing residential property. The farm's been there however many years. If someone wants to build a subdivision next to it, they need to know that there's gonna be dust, when they're tilling the soil. There may be fertilizer in the air in the spring. There may be dust in the fall with harvesting and all. So one way to make good neighbors is to have enough distance to help dissipate those potential impacts. We know that residential development has impacts on farmers. Pets, from residential development, can be an issue around livestock and the like. So a little bit of separation in this case is a healthy thing, and we think that should be the responsibility of the new residential development. One of the other things that we know is that folks also have to show some grace, I would say. Certainly, this is a scene I came across going to one of our meetings. Understandably, folks need to be able to move their equipment between their fields. Sometimes that's a little bit inconvenient, but that's part of living in an agricultural community. And so that is one of the reasons why it really takes a community to help support this activity over the long term. And I will emphasize again the importance of non-farm income, and there are so many different activities like this welding and equipment, small engine repair operation. Just one example of many kinds of activities where folks have good skills. The activity is occurring on large lots and is compatible with the rural landscape. But being able to engage in that activity can make a real difference in terms of generating more income to continue living in the rural landscape.
Okay, so a bit more about how we take some of that pressure off of the areas that people value so much in Johnston County, those being your environmental assets and those being your agricultural areas. The LU5 is discouraging intense residential development in our rural and unincorporated areas. So that is where a lot of our agriculture is, but it's also where we've got a lot of really nice environmental features and river corridors and so on. So outside of the areas that we've identified as the places to have those nodes of activity and the places to have more intense residential development are areas that are the lower intensity, but the open space requirements there can also be an approach to lessening encroachment on those environmental assets or the agricultural areas. So yes, the buffers, and yes, some of the grace of these voluntary ag communities, but what if the choice for how residential is delivered in some of these areas may be the conventional or the conservation design. So it's not to say one or the other. It's not to say the conservation will be required in an area. The idea is to present that as a choice and make it just as easy to do the conservation as to do the conventional. It's not to suggest conventional is bad. It's just different. But in terms of preserving those assets and stepping back away from those assets and stepping back away from the agriculture, you can have the same piece of property, deliver the exact same number of units, conserve more open space and possibly some of the agriculture in some of those areas, still have those units. So what you're seeing here is that alternative. The upper left is the conservation design. The one in the lower center is the conventional design. We think that with the conservation, the kinds of open space that would be set aside would fit the objectives of the county in terms of open space preservation. So you're maintaining that rural feel by protecting what matters on those properties. So the open space requirements do go up with that option, but the idea of what it takes to go through the design process and get that approved would be equal in both instances. The Open Space, Natural Resources, and Environmental section, this is one that they got a lot of support through the process to conserve what's so special about Johnston County. You don't have to look far to find some of these in the county, and those are highlighted on the map. You see them in the dark green. But that conservation depends a great deal on the public sector working closely with the private sector to raise awareness of what are those assets that are really special, what are the things that are uniquely Johnston County, and through that promotion and education of those, encouraging people to be better stewards of their own land, but also communicating if open space gets set aside, what should that be? A key recommendation in the plan is to do an open space management plan. And we think this is a real opportunity for Johnston County. About 10 years ago or so, you did what's really a green infrastructure plan. A lot of entities came together, nonprofits, local government, and so on, to define what could be green infrastructure in this county. And we think you have an opportunity to take that up a level and think about an entire system that encompasses a lot of those assets that were defined then, and maybe even includes some of the things that have a historic or cultural component to it as well. And when you look at it from a whole system standpoint, and you're answering the question of private development, what should be set aside, what should be saved, everybody's singing from the same hymnal. So they are looking at it in terms of, here's what we value as a county, here are the things that we've already delineated, and make that information readily available, communicate why it's important, and that system is more likely to be realized over time. Another one is encouraging the open space as an integral component of new development. We often see development proposals come through, they've met their development program, and then just what's left over as remnants becomes the open space within the development. The idea here is that in the code requirements, you can take that up a level and seek quality open space within development so it gets defined at the same time the other parts of the development are defined. So it becomes a centerpiece or at the front door of development and not just the land that's at the back that everybody forgets about. So it's a level of detail that can be woven into your regulations, and it benefits both the residents of the community and the county as a whole. Another topic of conversation that became a section in this is about the character and quality of design in new development and redevelopment. So maintaining that rural character is something that got a lot of discussion. How do we do that? How do we preserve that? So preserving that open space, that can be part of that overall open space mapping and just distinguishing or delineating what is it about the open space that matters. So it's in seeing some of these characteristics that are exhibited in this image and many others that contribute to what people define as the character for Johnston County. Tree canopy and the buffers that save a lot of our trees at the edges of our development also contribute to that. Under the heading of Parks and Recreation, we know there's been a lot of effort, even since before we began this process, establishing a broader, more multifaceted system of parks and recreation in the county. And it's complementing what would be happening in the municipalities, which is the right thing to do. The municipalities are your population concentration, so you've got the parks and recreation serving those areas. But from a broader perspective, we heard from the community about having a connected system, particularly with trails, greenways, and really tying into the regional network. So there are opportunities for that. There are opportunities for specific types of more regional facilities, but I would say that the trail network is something that got people's attention and they'd like to see an expanded system of that. So you are well on your way to that, but the idea of having an overall system that acknowledges those opportunities and they start to get implemented both through public sector initiatives as well as through private development.
Sure. We know how important economic development is and providing ample jobs for folks in the community. We know so many folks travel outside the county, but if they don't have to, that's a real benefit. We know how important economic development is from a tax base standpoint. We know how important it is from developing things that will help people in society. And y'all have a lot of assets and have been doing a lot of hard work in this area already. So one of the things that we really look at is trying to create complete employment areas where you have not only jobs but also other kinds of employment serving businesses. So that's one key principle. Another is the importance of training, and of course y'all heard from Johnston Community College earlier this evening. Workforce development is so important, and again, you've got great institutions and resources to draw on with that work. You also have the different assets. You have a great quality of life, and you've got jobs in the county and jobs near the county. So and you've got a great transportation system running through the county, and it continues to evolve close to the county. So all of those things really put you in a strong position to continue to be not only a desirable place to live, but also a desirable place to work. One of the things that we've seen a lot of attention on in the communities that we work over in recent years is healthy living. And so we know how important access to physical infrastructure where people can live active lives, how important that is. And we also know how important education is to that as well. This is a knowledge-based economy to a large degree, and so education is fundamental to that. And again, we are blessed, not only in the region but in the state, with an excellent community college system, excellent university system to complement our local system. So all of that is important in helping, like y'all heard earlier this evening, provide good prospects to the next generation. One of the things that we enable when we do concentrate development in nodes, whether it be the municipalities or the more rural activity centers that Ms. Nealon described as well, is we broaden the possible options for travel. Of course, we know that auto travel will still be by far the most prominent means of travel, but we know that some folks are challenged in having enough vehicles in their household, maybe for every working member. If they live in a compact community, that could be a place that could be served with transit service. And we are seeing a growing array of kinds of transit service with not only your traditional buses, but also microtransit, so on-demand vans and the like. And of course, we also have the prospect for some commuter rail as well in Johnston County, particularly in the northern part, closer to Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill and Cary. Infrastructure. This is something we heard extensively from folks about. There is a lot of concern about keeping pace with the rate of growth and change. We know this is an issue y'all wrestle with all the time. We know you've been having some detailed conversations as a board and a community about this. We know that you're in the midst of doing a long-term water supply plan and looking at water and sewer infrastructure as you think about how best to serve the county in the years ahead. One of the things that we know is so important with this, of course, is collaboration and coordination across the different systems. We've got some systems that have a lot of capacity and expertise and are bringing more capacity online in some of the municipalities, and some of the smaller municipalities that maybe need more the benefit of more collaboration with the county. So all of that suggests continuing and enhancing the level of coordination that you're doing, and also possibly exploring things like some kind of regional system or several regional systems. And when we look at the evolution that Wake County went through, they have actually essentially two systems, an east and a west, one based around the assets that the city of Raleigh has and one based around the assets of the city of Cary. And I was the planning director in the town of Morrisville when we handed our water and sewer lines over to the town of Cary because they were able to deliver that service more efficiently than we were. So exploring some kind of regional authority or collaborative arrangement is something that we think is worth doing. All of us during the pandemic have gotten a front row seat on the importance of being able to communicate virtually, and we know that the basis for that is broadband service that gives us access to the internet. We know this is a topic, likewise, that y'all have been wrestling with and working on. We know we've got strong resources at the state with the NC Division of Broadband and Digital Equity. We know we've got more resources flowing from the federal government in this regard as well. And the state, as we know y'all have seen, has sort of tried to tee up the different funding opportunities to help support distribution of resources to communities like yours to really make progress on this issue in terms of expanding service. We know that service is not only dependent on access to broadband, but also the devices and the knowledge to use them and the ability to pay for that monthly fee that invariably we have to pay for in order to get full access. So all of those things can come together, and so we think there's value, like we're seeing in more and more communities around the country, for a digital inclusion plan that sort of helps map out how you would make sure all of those things can come together to provide service to folks in the county. While we're still on infrastructure, I do want to say we've got some good comments about the importance of continued and greater collaboration with the school system. And so we have added some additional language to the draft plan just to continue building on the existing collaboration that y'all have been doing with the school system, particularly with school site location and identification. We know already the substantial contribution that y'all make to construction of school facilities. So all of that, we think you've got, you can continue to build on your existing efforts to facilitate that greater coordination as demand for schools continues with all the growth the county's experiencing. And then finally, we are seeing a dizzying array of emerging issues that are confronting our communities. Everything from climate change to cryptocurrency. Hard to believe, but if you search on cryptocurrency in North Carolina, there are actually communities that are having issues with crypto mining operations and the noise and energy and water that they use. So there are a myriad of different issues. Some of them we've been dealing with for a while, like an aging population. Others are things that we can see coming toward us, like autonomous vehicles that maybe have not fully arrived yet. But you may know that the NC 147 is an autonomous vehicle testing ground, one of the testing grounds approved by the U.S. Department of Transportation. So we're even beginning to see the development of those technologies, even though we think it'll be several decades away before we see significant number of autonomous vehicles on the road. But these are the kind of issues where advanced planning is so important. And so the Triangle J Council of Governments is about to release a report later in October, a briefing book on emerging issues for folks like yourself to be able to scan a number of different emerging issues, to learn about them if they're unfamiliar, and also to help you begin to evaluate which ones are most important to you. We think there's a real role for coordination at a county level, even a regional level, to share information on emerging issues, all to support advanced planning to help prepare yourselves to manage these different issues, like things like the pandemic that can have a significant impact on your community. All right, so that brings us back again to the toolbox. All the different things that Ms. Neeland and I have described fit pretty much into these four categories. Whenever we develop an implementation portfolio, we know that y'all are always working in an environment of limited resources. And so that really puts a premium on prioritization for those resources. And so we asked folks in the county for their input as part of beginning the process of prioritization. And so we had a list of all these different implementation strategies that are in the plan and invited folks to play money on, to tell us which of those issues they thought ought to be prioritized. We decided to put a local flavor on the play money, so you'll notice a familiar face if you look at that closely.
I wish you had taken a more recent picture than that one there, Lisa.
Chairman Lauder said we neglected to get his good side, but we did the best we could.
You can't find one.
It's not one of those.
So folks at our third public workshop that we held at the Ag Center voted on the different strategy, or, told us how they'd like to spend their money. You can see the results of that. I'm going to bottom line it for you. Here were the top strategies that each got 10 butch bucks or more invested in them from folks. And this, I would say, this is very consistent with what we heard throughout the planning process. Real interest in discouraging intense residential development in unincorporated rural areas. Real interest in preserving the rural character of the county in appropriate places. Supporting the continuance of the agricultural economy, of updating the development standards to reflect the updated vision. Interestingly, broadband was an issue that received a lot of attention. We've all been, of course, very sensitized to it in the last couple of years. Also, the protection of natural resources and focusing growth into the municipalities. So those were the top issues that we heard from folks on. And then we, taking the survey results that we got earlier and putting that information, intersecting that with what we heard in this exercise focused on implementation strategies. Again, you can see common themes here with the rural landscape, the working landscape, and directing growth to areas that provide the appropriate level of services to support it.
What was the green dot? I missed that.
That's what, those were places where folks told us in the last workshop that they really wanted to see as a priority for implementation. And the back, the larger set of a dozen different strategies were the top issues from the surveys conducted throughout the process. So again, a lot of consistency there. Now, when we finish a planning exercise like this, sometimes folks think that their job is over, but we know that really it's just beginning. That it's so important to make a smooth transition from planning to implementation to begin to realize your updated vision on the ground. In order to do that, as part of the project, we have some action planning that we're currently engaged in to work with the county staff to begin to operationalize some of the key strategies. We know that it'll also be important to receive updates, at least annually, on progress with implementation, and that implementation is really going to necessitate investment, both leadership and investment from y'all as the governing board, and that it's not, this is often some of this work builds on existing work, and other projects are new ones. So there's going to need to be new capacity. And we certainly would expect that in a growing environment anyway, as we're trying to serve more constituents. But if we do those things, we can, y'all can really heighten your ability to move smoothly from planning to implementation and move forward with this work. I will say, we've got 20 years of projects at least in this process. So all of these different projects are not going to happen overnight. Y'all will have to prioritize, and you will have to invest to make sure that this stuff happens. But if you do, it gives you a chance to begin to try and shape development in the ways that you want to here in the county in the years ahead. And with that, I'll turn it back to Ms. Neal.
Sure, and implementation doesn't mean that it's all on the county's shoulders. So we hope that this plan that's coming together for you is, at the most basic level, a communication tool that you can use with your partners, neighboring jurisdictions, private sector, and so on, to realize that vision. So it's a lot of detail in a plan, and it's been our pleasure to work with the community. The steering committee was fabulous. Staff has been great, and it's just really, from our perspective, been a great process. So we hope that you are seeing the details in this plan that will lead you into the future and get you to that future vision that the community has expressed. So with that, Well, thank you for your attention and happy to answer any questions.
All right, I would just, yeah, I think I would just say one thank you to your team, but also you mentioned the steering committee, which put in a lot of time working on this. So special thanks to those folks who put in the time and have the passion for seeing a better Johnston County in the future, and for all those 3,000 so folks who either came out to a workshop or responded to a survey. Thank them for their participation as well. So
I wish we'd have done this 30 years ago.
Well, good. Well, thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
has the chair got any plans where we can dive into this?
So, since you asked that question, I guess I should take what's in my head and let it come out my mouth. So
There you go. You're down through the hands and through the feet.
yeah. So I think the plan would be, and it's my plan, and I hope y'all agree with this. I know some of us discussed it. Is we heard information tonight, and I think at our next meeting in mid-October, which is the 17th, that we would have much more discussion on this and start to get down into the weeds on this. And I see that going for at least one additional meeting before we kind of get all the things hashed out. That I could be wrong on that. I just don't see us getting all that done in one meeting, and then and then sometime we'll have to have a public hearing at some point. So maybe by mid-November we'll have some resolution to this and approval of the plan. But I think it's going to be a lot of discussion going on at the next couple of meetings for sure.
Sounds optimistic.
I think we can take the things we all can agree on and knock those out and then dive into the things that...
Mr. Chairman, we all had preconceived notions, I think, of what we thought this process would end up being, or what we wanted it to end up looking like. But I hope we sort of wipe that as clean as we can. We're human, we might not. But let's go back and look at the process and look at what the citizens out there want to see done.
I think that's one of the things that the previous board and this board, when we started this process a year ago, that we did not want to be involved and influence. And I think this is, so this is a plan that's coming to us, and now it's our chance to take a look at it and, massage it and tweak it into a plan that we see best for Johnston County. But I do agree, we have a lot of information and public input on it, so it's something we definitely have to consider as we're moving forward with this plan. Anything else? Anything else I forgot?
No,
Okay.
I'm sure that we're going to have some good conversation on this, and we've been looking at what the plan has been given to us. I'm sure we're not going to all agree, that's okay too. But I just want to get the process done. Start on the process anyway. It's been lingering a while, so I just want to make sure that it goes.
Well, I do think it's worth mentioning that this is, and I think it was one of the earlier, this is the first step in the process. It's a big step, but there's also the update of the ordinances that go with it to make sure that they match up and go together. So there will be a second piece to this, which is the ordinances, but this is a huge first step. And I agree, it's probably something that should have been done on they had one less than 30 years ago, but probably should have been updated sometime in between the last one and this one. So anyone have any other general comments?
No, I think you just answered my question. I was just going to ask, as being new and just for the public to know, this is something that we're going to, I would hope, work closely with Braston and the planning department on before any decisions are made, to find out and make sure that planning department, planning board, and the board of commissioners are all on the same page of what expectations and implementation are.
I would encourage boards of the future to, once this is adopted and we feel good about it, that this continues to be a living document, that it's not left on the shelf for 19 years before it's ever looked at again. It's something that needs to be looked at periodically and kept up with the times, and hopefully we won't ever have to, we'll have to go back through the process again, but it won't be as labor intensive, hopefully.
12 years, Commissioner.
Was it 12?
12?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was here.
You know, there's a lot of people involved in any particular development area. For example, McGee's Crossroads, when you look at the plan that's been laid out here, you think, wow. Oh, but could that be, you know? I mean, it all makes sense. But getting all the players involved to make that happen is going to be real tricky.
Yes,
Not
sir.
if we create the plays.
All right. So thank you once again. And so Braston, I think your next up is an update on the draft 2033 State Transportation Improvement Program.
2033?
Thank y'all.
I won't be around 2033.
You might.
Will, you can be sitting right here.
You'll be haunting us then.
I think included in your agenda packets this evening was the 2024 through 2033 draft State Transportation Improvement Program. And what I've done is I've provided for you all the projects that are currently or being proposed for that STIP. Campo and, which is capital area MPO, and the Upper Coastal Plain RPO are receiving comments on the STIP currently. Comments can be anything under the sun, even if there's a project that's not on the STIP. If you'll give it to me, relay that to me as well, a project or something you like studied, we can do that through those organizations as well. Obviously, wouldn't make it on the STIP because it's going to miss that window for prioritization. However, any other project that is on the current STIP or on the proposed STIP, if you could provide comments to us, it could be as simple as whether it needs to be, you believe it needs to be accelerated, and obviously we want all of them accelerated, but there are priorities for some of these projects over others. So it could be a move up, move down situation. It could be an expansion of the project even, or even a reduction of the project in some situations. You find that there's been a project that has occurred previously that has taken some of the stress off of a roadway or an intersection or whatever that may be. So we can take those at any time in this process up until the STIP is actually adopted by the state. But we would rather get those sooner rather than later, if that's possible.
I'm a member of the Upper Coastal Plain RPO and Advisory Board, and I missed the last meeting. I was out of state, but I did have a phone conversation with James Salmons about what went on at the meeting, and unfortunately paints a bleak picture sometimes as it relates to funding sources. But approaching these projects might be like planting pine trees. It's a long-term proposition to get results, but if you don't plant it, it will never grow. So we do need to put our input in there.
And we've seen, as Commissioner Godwin mentioned, the cash flow issues and funding issues with DOT. We've seen some projects that have been pushed back in the programming over the years, over the last few years. One of those is we saw a case on NC 42 West this evening. That project was pushed back about 5 years, I believe, from construction start. It was originally supposed to be start construction in 2024. We're now looking at 2029. We'd like to see that project accelerated if at all possible. Other projects, NC 210 between 50 and Raleigh Road, we'd like to see that one accelerated. It's to be designed that we're transformed into a super street. Cleveland Road widening from Barber Mill to NC 42 is another, and those are just a few of the ones that we as staff have provided comments to Campo on, as well as RPO.
Mr. Chairman, there's a couple of things about this study, not about roads. We've got two things working against us that's going to push this road building back. Number one is from a revenue side. In North Carolina, all our roads are paid for by state revenue that comes from gas tax. There's less money coming in through gas tax. So we're getting hit on the revenue side. Then we're getting hit on the cost side with inflation and getting a workforce to build these roads. It's making the roads even more expensive. So Raston's right, that's why they're going to get pushed back. And those two are the primary reasons. I studied this thing pretty hard. 90% plus of the money that was appropriated on 2 pages dealt with 4 roads. 4 roads. I-95, I-40, 70, and 42. When you that's where, and then in addition to that, most of the other money went to bridges. So those 4 roads are what's taking the vast majority, and they'll be building those roads when most of us aren't around to look at any roads. I'm confident. So I think that's just what the plan is how you build those 4 arteries that basically carry our transportation.
Agreed. The one thing I think we really need to explore is there additional federal funding, federal highway monies for those, or at least for 2 of those, being Interstate 40 and I-95. Or if there are other opportunities. 70, I-42, 70 is another. I mean, that's if we can offset some of these expenditures, or actually, I guess, refocus some of those costs to federal highway money and maintain some of that in the state, that'd be great.
We discussed this stuff when I was in another place, and the big issue is I-95. And we discussed whether we need to make that a toll road, because I-95 for Johnston County sucks all the money out of our secondary roads. There's no money left over for our secondary roads because primarily of I-95, which is the busiest road east of the Mississippi. And it's just a problem of how we find the money to keep that critical road open and still have some money left for our secondary roads.
Agree.
I have a question about and it may be on an earlier TIP, but the intersection at I-95 at exit 95, that whole intersection was supposed to be redone, but I'm not finding it on here. Is it on a prior TIP?
It's on a prior. It's funded. It's funded. It must be on prior to the TIP. I didn't see it either.
Either that or it may be under
funded.
Highway 70.
I looked pretty thoroughly through both pages, and I don't find it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. But I was just curious about that. If it's
About that project on exit 90 also.
Is that, and they got one that's US 95, US 70 business upgrade interchange. Is that the one?
That's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah.
That's it.
But it also had other relocation and all that stuff.
There's relocation. God, I can't remember the road.
On the,
there's relocation of the road that comes in.
Is that Rick's Road?
I don't think it's Rick's.
Where'd you find it at?
Right in the middle.
But it comes in there by the old Howard Johnson, ties in there, so that actually will terminate. Will actually be a dead end or a terminal now, or a terminus, and they'll kind of realign that road to catch more local traffic and be able to move local traffic in that area a little better, keeping it away from that interchange.
When is that,
2022 is what it says on here, which I was talking about.
2022?
Yeah, the project's been designed, as I understand it.
Oh, that was just a pavement rehab, pavement and bridge. Doesn't have a date.
But,
I think it's part of that.
Fred, with as many cars as on the road now, why would the gas tax revenue be down? I mean, there's a...
Because the cars are getting more miles per gallon.
Not buying as much gas.
It doesn't take as much gas for the car. We got these cars that get 25 to 30 miles to the gallon, whereas when this gas tax was proposed, they were getting 15.
For the electric car, haven't paid.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, when that comes, I mean, it's going to be.
That's
I
a
mean,
whole other question.
Funding roads with gas tax is a endangered species. The
That road
problem
you were
is
looking
they
was
can't
Mallard
come
Road.
up with what to replace it, whether it be they put something on your car and keep up with how many miles you drive, and you pay for it that way, whether you have toll roads. Of course, toll roads are so unfair. I always say the rich people in North Raleigh got their I-40 built and didn't pay for it, and those of us in the south have to pay a toll for our I-40 beltline. And so it's a tough thing. I just aside, my first year as a senator, we spent months yelling, screaming, fighting between the Republicans and the Democrats. And then the last week, one day the last week, they start talking about money for roads. There is no party. It's your area, and I don't care whether they're Republican or Democrat. You get together trying to get money for your area. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah. So Braxton, I guess the question for me is, as we're looking through this list, is this, we got a spreadsheet if we want to, on this time. So do you want our thoughts of priority? Because I know some of these are under construction. How do we, and Fred mentioned the main roads and then the bridges. So what do you need back from, and we need to split it up between the Upper Coastal Plain, RPO, and Campo, or how do you want us to make comments on this?
I can give you this in an editable format, so where we can list a column, an additional comments column. In each one of those side project, you can sort it.
Okay.
We should be able to sort it, do whatever you want to with it. Then we can give you, you'll make the comment, whatever that comment is about whatever project it is, that's fine. Obviously, those that are funded and under construction, not much we're going to be able to do there, but there are others that are, most of them are going to be whether they need to be accelerated, and some may be even pushed back just because the need is not there. Not to say the need's not coming, and we want to look forward. We don't want to, we don't want to wait until we need it to begin the process. But at the same time, we know we have priorities here in the county with regard to some of our roadways. And I don't really want to give any examples, but there are those that could be decelerated and others accelerated.
So would this list, when we go for the STIP, would it be also then in turn used for priorities for LAP project as well, or is that separate?
Well, actually, LAP, one of the criteria for LAP is STIP priority.
STIP, yeah.
STIP priority. So for us, where I see LAP coming into play is creating with our, say, greenways and trails, if we get a trails, if we can define a project and design a project, or at least identify a project that has a mobility component to it, and also serves that recreational component within our trail system, that would be key. That would be a perfect project for LAP. I think LAP within them, now we can do the LAP as a roadway project. It's just going to be, we've got to identify that, and it's got to be competitive because LAP funding is limited. I mean, I think Campo's budget was $25 million.
Yeah.
Well, I just hope that they push Interstate 42 back to about 2080.
Yeah.
Preston, in Leo, our representative on the
Yes.
I believe so.
on the board now.
He is.
That's where you need to go.
Yeah.
That's where
That's where the
that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yes.
Well, I guess my hope is that we've got this round, but we've got a transportation plan update, at least some RFQs on the street, and due in first part of November to get something back. But as we look, I would love for us to start identifying projects that are not 40, 95, I-42, and whatever, and 42 or 30, so what'll be 36, to make sure we've got other projects that we feel like is a need for this county. So I hope as we go forward, we'll start seeing other projects we can move up the list and get funding for. So,
Mr. Chairman, Tony, what just interested in why you said that about 42.
Because 70 is a commuter highway. Always has been and always will. And I'm sitting here thinking, when you talk about how much it's going to cost, what are they going to do with them 61 driveway connections from Pine Level to Goldsboro right now?
How to make service roads.
Yeah, and how much is that going to cost?
Yeah.
I mean, how much cost has that added? That, you know, I wouldn't mind them going building, if you want to send folks to Raleigh faster, I wouldn't mind them building another road up there, but take a commuter.
Yeah, if we want to get people to Raleigh faster, they need to fix Pritchard Road up. I can tell you that.
But it's just, you know,
I think this project like that, I'm talking about identifying on our, through our transportation plan update where we can work on projects that are critical to interior Johnston County, not passing people through
because
Johnston County.
And another thing, the way of life for folks from Pine Level to Princeton is going to change. Now, them folks at Princeton got a big shock for them when they start doing their overpasses, because all of a sudden
The town's gonna die.
Huh?
The town will die.
And a city street's going to become a
desolate part.
I can tell you, I would disagree with you 100%. In Clayton, when they had to bypass, downtown Clayton didn't die.
Well, because they still go that way.
When
They-
78
people still
was
gonna
through
go through
Pine
Princeton.
Level, it was always activity. Any time of day you were there with activity. When they routed it to 70 in 91, I think it was, Pine Level for a while there just had a real problem.
Well, the problem is they take the city streets and turn them into a thoroughfare to interstate.
Yeah.
A street that's, you know.
Not intended for.
Not intended for. And, you know, they don't have any concern about that, you know. And that's what I live with every day. It's not even a paved road. It's got that rock.
You'll get a chance going here and move that project on down the list.
I'm going to move as far as I can.
Suggest to put a speed bump on.
Yeah, a speed bump. All right, anything else for Braston?
10 more years, maybe?
No, since this is my first time, doing something like this, I think it's also important that we look at, now that we have this plan of where we want things to go to keep things, together. If we go ahead and we bump some of these road projects where we know the growth is going, I mean, we can watch the exits grow one after the other. If we know it's already going to go there, go ahead and try to elevate those projects. So when projects get brought up, we have a good reason to say, we shouldn't slap 20 subdivisions on a main highways. This should be commercial, and we widen the road or the road's being widened in accordance with that, so.
Yep. So we have our assignment
Yeah.
to get you back some comments.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Do we set that for the next meeting? Can we just email them to you in the next couple of weeks?
You can email them or provide them to me in
whatever way works.
In concert at the next meeting. Either way, it's fine.
You're going to send out the spreadsheet?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You know what's really mind-boggling is at the start of this spreadsheet, it picks up from other counties. Jackson County is there. And if you think about it, we got 2 full pages of this, and we're only one of 100 counties, and they're all clamoring for money for their projects.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like a bridge over the Tuskegee River in Jackson County.
Yeah. All right. All right, next up, then we have manager report and comments. Wow, none at all today. All right, now it's time for board reports and comments.
I'm skipping.
Anybody have any that they missed this morning?
I had a few things to rehash, but I'm going to skip it. We'll
Hold on
rehash
to it,
next
hold on
time.
to it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stevens, you weren't
happy
here
to be here.
You're just happy to be here. Yeah. All
We're
right.
happy to have you back.
That's right.
All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Let's go home, we're adjourned.